Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Experts Game podcast. My name's Matt Russell, and I'm your host. And I am excited that you're here with us today because we've got a special guest. His name is Chris Dale. He is out of the Morganton, North Carolina area. Chris is the lead pastor at Providence Baptist Church. I believe that's in Hickory, but he'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few moments. And he's also a part-time teacher at Christ Classical. I think that's in Rutherford College. So are excited to have Chris with us today, and welcome, Chris. How you doing?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, I'm lucky to have met Chris a little bit earlier, and we had a little conversation before this recording. But Chris was referred by a friend of mine, and referrals in business, are always great. So it's exciting to get to know him, and I'm glad that he's on with us today. Chris, I'm going to ask you a few questions, but I first want to get started with your introduction, and I'm going to let you do that. If you would just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I grew up in the Morganton area, spent some time away when I went to college and serving in various churches, but I eventually came back to the area and I am married. I have three children, 10 and 8 and 3. Takes a little bit to get all those ages right, but I'm fairly good with it now. And then as you mentioned, Pastor, we say it's in Hickory, but it's kind of in what's called Vale. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. But God has done a wonderful work here. It's amazing. I hope to tell you more about that. And then, as you mentioned, I do teach part time, where my kids also go at Christ Classical Academy in Rutherford College.
Okay, well, that is fantastic. I think that when I normally talk to a business owner, I ask, well, why did you choose that particular business? But I know that your answer may be a little different with the church. What actually, or maybe when, did you actually feel the call to become a minister?
You know, looking back on it, as far as a time that I remember the call would be when I was on a mission trip to Mexico. I was around, I'm going to say 15 years old. I was asked to do a devotion. It turned into probably my first sermon, I guess. It probably wasn't that great, but to me, it felt good. And I really experienced that. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give that encouragement and that hope to people. But I look back over it now, and I lost my dad to suicide when I was 8 years old. And I had some people that really went above and beyond to reach out to me, that now I know were people of faith, teachers, bus driver. I could just list them, and they were put in my path. And through the smallest of actions, they changed my life. And really, that's a driving force for why I do what I do.
Okay, that's a great little analogy because a lot of times with business, now you guys know that I work primarily with startup businesses. A lot of times businesses are started based on something that happened in the past, a desire, a need. Maybe they found something in the marketplace that was not encouraging to them, so they wanted to change it a little bit. And it sounds like, Chris, that maybe your direction and how you got into this profession is very similar to that. You were encouraged, you were molded by all these people that you mentioned, the bus drivers, the other workers, the teachers, and things like that. And what that led to was the feeling that you wanted to help mold other people as well.
Absolutely. And, Matt, I would say to your point, of course, I know that people sort of veer away or don't really like to view the church as a business. and it's not in the particular business sense, but in another very real way it is. And I appreciate what you said about meeting a need in the marketplace. I go back to a time 20 years ago. I was serving as a minister of music, and we were at a little old country church in Polk County, and we were trying to figure out how can we get people here. And we looked around, and the void we saw was there was no summer camps offered at all. And so here at this little tiny church, with about 60 to 100 people, we began to offer this summer camp. And the first year, the friend and I that were going to do it, we were so nervous about it because we only had 8 kids, and we committed to just, hey, we're going to see this through. We're probably not going to get a paycheck these 2 months. We're going to have to do other things, but that's okay. The next year, we grew to about 25 or 30. The next year, we had a wait list. And so, instantly when you mentioned that about business and finding what's missing, that sprung to my mind.
Okay, wow. That's great. So if you're listening to this today, I hope you're taking notes. I've already gotten so many great pieces of information that I can use, in my business, and I know you guys can too. So whether you're a preacher, a teacher, a startup entrepreneur, an existing business owner, multi, level corporation, whatever it could be, you have to use these same tools in your life, in your business, in order to grow. And what was really interesting is what you said at the very end about the first year you kind of grew to around 25 or 30 kids, but then you had a wait list. And so much of us today, so many people today, we're in this cell phone mentality, I think, where we want instant gratification with everything we've got. And I teach this all the time. I feel like that it's not going to happen tomorrow. If you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs out there, their business did not happen overnight. I mean, yeah, some people might have gotten a little bit of a break here or there, especially today with the world of social media. You can be known pretty quickly, but most of the time it takes a lot of effort. And in your case, it took 2 years, to build up that wait list that you needed. So, or maybe not 2 years, but however long between the camps. And I think a lot of us need to realize that today, that we're planting those seeds today so that something could happen 5 years down the road or however long it takes.
Well, an analogy that I heard this morning at a training I was at for the school, we were talking about developing good character, and not just teaching kids information, but building kids. And the analogy, and man, it goes right along with what you just said, is you don't get one huge nail and nail it into a board and a house is made. You have to use infinite numbers of nails, and it's the little nails, the little moments that create this big house. And how true that is of life, how true that is of business, and how true that is of our spiritual lives. Anything we do takes time.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it kind of reminded me when you said that of, I don't know if you guys can see, I'm a big Georgia fan. I graduated from the University of Georgia a long time ago in 1994, but I'm a huge college football fan. And the coach that we have there now, his name's Kirby Smart, whether you follow football or not. Um, he has said many times, I mean, he's a winner, definitely. He's won several national championships in the past few years and is a great coach. But one thing that always stands out to me is the fact that he says his job is to not necessarily win the football games. Obviously, he has to do that or he won't be there very much longer. But his job is to mold the men that come through the program. And he would rather build them into something that they're going to be really proud of in life, aside from just winning football games. And I think we all do that, or a lot of us strive to do that in our businesses, in our lives, our careers, our professions, in our families to mold other people. I remember we were having the conversation earlier about coaching, and I coached a lot of youth, sports when my kids were younger. I had a daughter and a son about 3 years apart, so that allowed me to coach for probably about 10 years, and that was their ages between like 5 and 12. And in those 10 years, I was able to coach a lot of kids. And my goal obviously was to win. I mean, I'm very competitive when it comes to that. But seeing the kids later on in life and having them call me coach means so much more, because that means I made an impact, on their youth. I have, matter of fact, I called a kid a few years ago, not knowing that's who I was calling, but I needed somebody to do some landscape work. And I had got this referral, and the name looked familiar. And I called and I said, by the way, did you play basketball for me a good many years ago? He said, yeah, coach, don't you remember me? And I said, I do, but I wasn't sure it was the same person I was calling. And to me, that just makes me happy inside. It makes me feel like, I'm accomplished. And I feel more accomplished in some of those things than I do in growing businesses sometimes. So I'm glad you said that, Chris. I think that there's so many takeaways already, and we're just kind of getting started today. So let me ask you about this. I always ask people this, and it varies in different circumstances. What would you consider your average workday to be? We know you're a full-time pastor, but you also teach. What would you consider your average workday to be like?
Yeah. So normally, uh, I'll get up and hit the gym about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is a whole nother story. But I used to weigh 300 pounds. Now I weigh half of that. Uh, that's been off for 12 years. Going to the gym would have been out of the possibility years ago. But anyway, another podcast, another time. So I get up, do that, come back home, and then we spend the next hour in hectic chaos trying to get out the door and get everybody with their clothes and their backpacks and their computers and whatever else they may need. And then we go for what we call staff devotions, and kind of get everybody together as the staff of the school on the same page. And then we will typically go to our rooms, receive the students. I then teach 3 classes, and around 12, I will leave and I come down to the church and I spend some time catching up on who's called the answer machine. Yes, we still have one. And so we'll check on who's called that. I'll think about, if there are any people that need to be visited. I meditate over my sermon, spend time in prayer, uh, go out and make visits, think about uh, new prospects that have filled out guest information cards or perhaps have texted me. One thing I appreciate is the variety of each day. It it can really vary. I may not be in the office at all one day. I may be at the hospital the next day. Last night I was out at a FCA event over at Fred T. Ford High School, watching our youth lead in worship and supporting that. So variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One thing that you were talking about is the fact that it's not necessarily the same thing every day. And I know that that's the same in my life. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate the difference. And I think I would be pretty bored if I ended up doing the same thing every single, day. But let me ask you this question. And this was not something that I had thought about before, but I'm curious. Have you ever been in the pulpit and got ready to deliver your message for today? Because you said you meditated upon your sermon that you were going to preach probably that week. Have you been in the pulpit and felt the desire, the need to just change everything right then? And you did.
Well, it's odd that you asked that. I around 2 weeks ago, I think we have two services in the mornings to accommodate our growth. We just finished, well, God finished a $2 million building debt free, which is amazing. But we are blessed that we can't hold everybody at one service. So 2 weeks ago, I was sitting there on the stage and I had preached the message the first time. It was out of Numbers chapter 16, which is an interesting text because when people think of great biblical preaching, the book of Numbers is not usually one of those places people go because it really seems so burdensome, and the thous and the these and it sounds like a lot of hocus pocus. And so the whole text of it was a guy named Korah uh, gets upset, and he has some other people that join him, and they challenge Moses's authority and Aaron's authority to the priesthood. And at the first service, I sort of just walked text by text and I went through it, and it was fine. But at the second service, as I was sitting there preparing, I thought, I don't feel like in me that hit the way it needed to. I did not drive home the point that I needed to. And so I completely just gutted, sitting there listening to the music, my outline, because I felt that I just needed to do it differently. So rather than do it the way I'd done it, I read the entire text, which was sort of laborious because it was 40 verses. But then I was able to drive home the point that what they were challenging was Moses's, that's a mouthful, authority. And the way that relates to us now is biblical authority. A lot of people would say the pastor's in charge. And as I told our church, if you're part of an organization where one man tells everybody else what to do, that is not a church. That's called a cult.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from what you just said. Um, you know that I teach a lot of seminars, and I've had to do that too. A lot of times, well, now I primarily teach seminars online. I do a lot of those with most every place that I teach at, but occasionally I'll do some in-person seminars, and sometimes it's just a spur of the moment. I'm reading the room. I'm trying to figure out who's there and who's going to be impacted the most with what I have to say. And many times I have to change, and I think that's really important. I was just curious. That was kind of off topic a little bit, but
well, the way you said that sort of jogged my mind. You said reading a room. We had our dedication service for the new building Sunday morning,
mm,
and I had a sermon typed out and prepared, but we started at 10:30 and it got to be about 11:30, and we were nowhere near the time for me to give the message. But you could sense the palpable anxiety in these 300 Baptists that perhaps I was still going to preach. And so they were missing the enjoyment of the songs and the worship that was taking place because there was a very real anxiousness. We live in an age where people don't want to be stuck somewhere for 2 or 3 hours. And so I just got up and I said, hey, the youth were supposed to sing this song. And right before they did, I said, I'm not going to preach. You can go ahead and take a breath. I'm going to give you what I had planned to say in 30 minutes. I'm going to give it to you in 5. And so I think sometimes like you said, you just have to read a room.
yeah, everybody had to get to KFC before lunch.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, well, I appreciate I appreciate this conversation today. A lot of great things that we've talked about. Let me ask you this: if you felt like you needed to do something else, if maybe you were being called in another direction, what would you do? Have you ever thought about that?
A lot. I have, if I could do anything and I knew I would be successful, which is sort of a caveat. Whoever starts out knows they'll be successful, but I actually love baking. I like making cheesecakes. I like making cakes. My decoration skills would need a little work, but I would love to own a bakery or a restaurant.
That's impressive. That's that's kind of cool. I think okay, I'll put something in the vision right now. I think food truck might be in your future.
My
And some kind of play on the fact that that you're a pastor. It could be something like the traveling cloth or the I don't know. I can throw up so many different ideas. What's
I,
funny about that? Do
I
I?
thought I make a great cinnamon roll, and I
Yeah.
thought uh, holy rollers, but then I thought that could go the wrong place.
That's funny. My wife's a professional baker. I mean, she owns her own baking business and is really good at what she does. She doesn't make too many cheesecakes. She focuses a lot on wedding cakes. She does a lot of macarons. She does truffles, caramels, and things like that. But occasionally we'll do cinnamon rolls. She's doing Valentine's Day is coming up. I think she's getting ready to do some petty fours, and I don't know. I mean, it's just fantastic stuff. That's why I'm probably a little bit weightier now than I should be. But anyway, that's a great idea. That kind of led me to the next question, which I won't have to ask now because I already know. But a lot of times I ask people, is there something that people don't know about you? Or maybe there's a hobby. Maybe it could be different from baking. Is there something else that's there that you'd like to share with everybody?
Sure. I think as I mentioned at the start of the conversation, one of the greatest miracles to ever occur in my life personally was my weight loss. When my dad committed suicide and I lost my grandmother that same year, I began to turn to food for comfort. And, you know, I I can't explain it. I tried 100 different times to lose weight. I tried everything in the world, but I had prayed about it. I was 26 years old. I had moved home. I had no romantic prospects, no job prospects. I was at the bottom point of my life. And amazingly, the Lord opened the door. I went to something called Weight Watchers, which is not the Weight Watchers of today. Uh, that's a whole different story. But anyway, they've tried to change with the times. But little by little, I saw that yes, I could do this, and I never will forget the name. The woman's name was Lori. She was the leader, and she said I had lost 5 pounds that first week, went back, and I'd gained almost everything and had done nothing wrong. And I went and sat in my car and cried, just determined that I would be this uh, person stuck in a 300-pound person's body for the rest of my life. And I went back in, and I can only say that was because of the Lord. And I told her how I felt, and she said, "Well, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?" And I said, "Probably nothing." And she said, "Stick with it." And I did. And a year and a half later, I made goal weight. And I run probably 20 miles to 30 miles a week. So my desire would be to be able to go and help people that other people don't understand. Like I maybe you've seen the show My 600-Pound Life, or they have one of the more unsavory, I guess I'll call it a guilt show that me and my wife watch, is the sisters. I'm trying to remember their name. They come on TLC. Anyway, it's a funny show, but it's very real. Weight, a lot of times, is linked to our emotions. And people say, how could those people get the 600 pounds? One bite at a time. And it's a lot harder to undo what you have done. And so I think that would be my desire. If I could do anything as a hobby, it would just be for free, help people lose weight that are serious about it.
Okay. Wow. I think that's really good. And I took away a few things that you said there that I'll go ahead and just share with the audience a little bit on business and entrepreneurship and building things. It won't come overnight. We have to build little by little. Just like you did in your weight loss journey, it didn't happen instantly. It really didn't happen over the course of a few days or a few weeks or a few months. It took little by little effort. And if I could encourage anybody to do anything, is that stick with it like you did. Stay with things, bite off a little bit at a time. It's a whole lot easier to chew a bite of a steak than the whole thing at one time. So take steps little by little and see, where you're at in a year. I I work with a lot of people who provide content online, and I struggle with this sometimes too. But I know what all of the experts say with content is that publish something every single day, and before you complain about it not working, wait for a year. If you can publish for a whole year without complaining that it's not working or without stopping, you'll be surprised at where your business, where your life, where your influence is. So I think that's very similar to what you just said. The other side of what you said, and I'll let you explain this a little bit more. Um, I thought of the image that popped in my mind was kind of the two-sided or the two-edged sword. On one side, it may be sharp. On the other side, it may be a little different. And what I mean by this is that sometimes some of the things we do could be good or bad. We can eat, but we can eat healthy or we can eat not so healthy. And I think that's where it goes with life and in what you were just saying, that sometimes we have to look for the good side of the sword, I guess, or maybe the sword's not the right analogy, but maybe we have to look for the good side of things, even though we know that if we change it around, it could be the bad side of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's two things that stick out on my mind when you say that. Number one, find the positive thing in all situations, because there is positives. Sometimes you got to scrape the bucket to find them, but there are positives in there. I'm late. Well, how do you find a positive in being late? Well, because maybe it gave you more time to clear your mind. Maybe you missed an argument you would have had. And then the other side of that is exactly what you said. Uh, Anything we do, we can do with a wrong intent or a right intent. And of course, I am a pastor, so I have to throw a scripture in there. Paul tells us, whatever we do, do for the glory of God. And I try to think when I eat, how can I eat for the glory of God? How can I do that? Well, because my body's a temple. I want to live as long as I possibly can. I don't control the determined day, but I certainly think I control the quality. And I want to give my best effort whether it's my business, whether it's getting enough sleep at night, not too much. Like you said, just trying to find that balance, because balance is so, so important. If you don't take care of yourself first, you can't do anything for anybody else.
Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true. And we'll go ahead and leave it at some of that. Chris, I appreciate you today. Um, Guys, if you haven't been taking notes, you need to go back and watch this again and take as many notes as you can. I see so many similarities between what we've talked about today with pastoring churches, teaching in schools, to running businesses every day. There is so many different things that I personally took notes on as well throughout this interview. So I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you so much for being here. I'll leave with one final question. And normally I'll ask if the person I'm interviewing has any special tips for entrepreneurs. But I want to ask you a little bit different spin on that. What do you have as far as tips go for people who feel like maybe they are being led in a direction that might not necessarily be what they thought they would be doing? We all get in situations where we have this vision of what we want to do in life and where we want to go. And then sometimes things happen that we don't pursue those things. So what kind of tips or advice would you have for somebody that maybe is called into the ministry, or maybe is called to do mission work, since you said you went on a mission earlier? Any advice on or tips on those?
Matt, I would say my life has, first of all, I was the boy when I was 9, 10, 11 that would hide in the clothes racks. Some of y'all remember the round circular clothes racks, and we would see my teachers or my friends from school, and I would disappear, and my mom's looking around like, where did he go? So getting up in front of people, talking, doing a podcast, no, none of those things were ever in my wheelhouse. But that would be my first thing: is don't limit yourself. Don't tell yourself, well, I'm a shy person. Well, I'm a quiet person. You may indeed be all of those things, but that doesn't mean you have to be, that you can't change, that you can't work to overcome your introvertedness. I am by nature still an introvert. I prefer solitude and being by myself. But what the opportunity has presented and what I've been called to demands that I learn the skills of an extrovert. Now, can I make myself an extrovert? No. But I can learn the skills, and I can use other extroverts who I admire to learn from. And then I think that my second thing would be, don't limit yourself to, well, I'm only going to bake cinnamon rolls. If somebody comes to you and is offering you the opportunity to do something, say, make cheesecakes, and they're going to pay you to do that, try it. You might be successful. My best friend, who I was blessed to serve with, he was the pastor, I was the music minister. We grew up together and used to have a fight over who would be what, and I guess he won out. But early in my ministry, he said, "Hey, Chris, our youth director quit, and you're going to have to work with the youth." And he didn't ask; he just told me, and he sort of voluntold, what we call it. And I was scared to death, because even till this day, I still get nervous around high school, middle school age. It's something that I have to work to overcome. But man, that ended up being one of the biggest blessings of my life. And I just learned that as people, there's really not anything we can't do if we don't limit ourselves.
Yeah, and we definitely have to try. I know trying is hard sometimes, and it's challenging. It scares us, but you'll never get there if you don't try. You'll never be successful at something if you don't put that effort in first. Chris, I do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, if you have enjoyed this interview, which I hope you have, I hope you've taken plenty of notes and found some things that you can you can basically implement in your life and in your business. Please subscribe to this channel. Make sure you follow us. You'll get information on all of the new interviews that we have. And I'll post some of Chris's information down in the comments below. So you'll be able to reach out and get in touch with him as well. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate you being here. And everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.